So my wife just disappeared out of thin air. I had no idea where she went. This is my wife of 5 years. Doing something like this is completely out of the ordinary, so I freak out. Well, when you guys figure out where she went, you're going to be so flabbergasted, you're not even going to believe what I'm saying. I just ran into my wife who's been missing for 5 years. I was so stunned I did not confront her, and I'm not sure if I should look for her or just leave her be. First, let me tell you how I got here. Many years ago, I met Stacy at a party at a friend's house. She approached me, asked if I was there alone and if I wanted a bit of company. We ended up spending the entire party together and exchanging numbers. Whenever we would talk, she'd always initiate the conversation first. She would make these conversations when I could not and had wide and varied interest, and even if she would never heard of something I was into, she would go and research it so we could talk about it. To be honest, I never felt so seen or heard in a relationship before. In all my previous ones, it felt like I had to know everything about my partners. While they weren't as invested in my interest, maybe that's why I fell for Stacy so hard. She gave me the care and attention I was starving for. It wasn't long before we started talking about a future together, and I asked if she wanted children, and she said she wasn't sure. She thought too many couples jump to have kids too fast, and it just ends up throwing a wrench in the relationship. But now they're focused more on the kid than each other, and that was the sentiment I could understand. When I took her to meet my family, she got along with everyone well, and even my crotchery old grandpa. God rest his soul. Every time I went over to my parents' house, my whole family and mom would ask about her and nag me about when I was bringing her over again. I was really starting to consider a future with her. Unfortunately, I did not get to meet her family. She said she went no contact with them because they were super toxic growing up. It's not something she likes to talk about, and I don't want to pressure her into telling me anything she doesn't want to talk about. I figure she'll open up when she's ready. For our 2-year anniversary of dating, I took her on a trip to Zion National Park and proposed. She said yes, and we spent the next years planning our wedding and moving into a new apartment together. We decided on something small. The wedding, not the apartment, and only my immediate family and few friends came. For our honeymoon, I wanted to go to Mexico, but Stacy said she wanted to see more of the national parks. Zion was her first. So we went to the Glacier Park instead. It was a fun time, and the trip to Mexico could be an anniversary sting. When we got back to the topic of kids came up again. We had a 2-bedroom apartment and more space, and Stacy said that she wanted to just focus on us for now, but would be open to the idea in the future. The next few years, they fly by. The happiest years of my life by far, and we always found time for each other, even when we were both busy with work. We spent birthdays and holidays with my family and saw many more national parks. Then year 3 of our marriage came around and things took a turn. The topics of kids came up yet again, but I was more serious about it. We've been married for 3 years now, and I was headed into my 30s, and I wanted to be a dad, and Mom wanted to be a grandma. She said she was ready to try. I was ecstatic. I immediately started prepping our second room, and I moved all of our extra junk out of there. I put a fresh coat of paint on the wall and started looking at cribs and stuff. Then 2 weeks later, I came home to an empty house. Usually, Stacy got home before me. She worked at a local florist shop, and if she ever had to stay late, she'd always call ahead of time. I'd spoken to her on a lunch break to ask what she wanted for dinner, and she'd make no mention of it. I called her cell phone, but no answer. I called the florist, no answer. I decided to wait 15 minutes in case she got caught in traffic. Well, when that time passed, I started to panic. I got into my car and drove down to the florist myself. The shop windows were dark, and I frantically started calling and texting her, but no avail. I called my parents and my friends to see if they've seen or even heard from her. Well, nobody had, and I was driving around town to all of our favorite spots to see if there was anything, and there was nothing. My family and friends all hopped into their cars and started looking around. After hours and hours of it, I finally decided to go to the police. My dad was a retired officer and sent me directly to somebody who could help me. They took down all of Stacy's information and issued a bolo. Be on the lookout. They also told me to go home, look around the apartment carefully to see if anything was out of place. If there were cameras to check, well, check them. I personally didn't have cameras in the apartment, but I knew my landlord had some. It was the middle of the night, though, so I had to wait till the next day. I contacted my landlord as soon as I could and explained the situation to him. He promised to get me the footage right away. I told him to send one copy to the police and one to me. I looked around the apartment more, and at first, nothing seemed out of place. But when I looked closer, I noticed there were less of her things in the closet and more of mine. And though somebody had hung up extra clothes to give the illusion the closet was still full, when I looked through the drawers, the clothes on top were neatly folded, but when I lifted them up, there was newspaper underneath. I checked the garage and half of the suitcases were gone. At the time, I did not want to believe what I was seeing. There was no way she would just up and leave out of the blue. I called my parents and friends to tell them what I found, and they told me to wait for the camera footage before I drew any conclusions. So, about an hour later, I get a call from the police to come down to the station. They sat me in a room to show me what they found, and they'd gone to the florist shop and spoken to Stacy's boss, who told them that she left work at lunch, around 1 p.m. in the afternoon, saying that she had a, quote, family emergency. Then they showed me the footage from the landlord. Guys, it showed Stacy going into the building at 1:30 with a box in her arms, then coming out about 2 hours later with the box and 3 suitcases. If that was not enough, they went to the bank too and found out that she emptied her account. My suspicions were absolutely confirmed at that point. She up and left. The police told me the only other thing that they could do was ask the phone company for her cell phone record, just to make sure she wasn't being blackmailed or something. But that would take a while. I remember just feeling numb. Those 3 years were the happiest of my life. I mean, my marriage, my family, just all vanished in an instant. There were times I spent hours going over everything that led up to this. Stacy's disappearance, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She'd been her usual bubbly self the whole time, and I could not think of any reason she would just leave like that. Months go by, then years, and I never felt like myself again. My friends came by and helped me get rid of her stuff in hopes that I could have a fresh start. It helped a little, but in a way it made the apartment feel even more empty. It's been 5 years since she disappeared, and only a year since I've started feeling like myself again. My friends and I went on a trip this week to watch a football game. We bought our tickets early in the season and rented out an Airbnb. Even though we were only going to one game, we booked it for the whole week. This was the first time in a long time I started feeling happy again. And then I went out to grab some beer, pizza, and a few snacks. I was in the Walmart parking lot packing the stuff into the car. I look over my shoulder. Who do I see? Stacy. Stacy, she had a kid in her arms, a little boy by the looks of it, and shopping bags on her shoulder. I thought I was hallucinating. I just stood there staring until she got in the car and drove off. I couldn't believe what I just saw. I sat behind the wheel for God knows how long. It wasn't until my friends called me to ask what's going on that I came to my senses. So I drove back to the Airbnb and told my friends everything. They were stunned, asked me if I was sure it was her. I probably should have confronted her, but I was too stunned to say a word. One of my friends said that I should look around to see if I could find her again, because I do deserve some answers. I don't know, though. That seems a bit stalkerish. Also, while I do want answers, it seems like she's moved on with her life, and I'm desperately trying to move on with mine. It's the middle of the night and I can't sleep, so I figured I would just ask you guys for advice. We still have 4 days left in the Airbnb, so we'd have time to look around, but should I confront her or should I just move on? What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here, and man, today's story is a wild one. I do have a few comments I want to check out before we hop into update number 1. This is the top comment of the original post, and guys, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, take a second, hit that subscribe button. It does support the channel a lot, and that way, you'll never miss a juicy story. Here's the top comment. It says, OP, I understand and respect that you want to move on from all this and that you don't want to come off as a stalker or whatever. I think that's pretty noble. However, I think you're forgetting one important deal. That's still your wife, man. From everything you said, it sounds like you're still legally married. I completely agree with your friend. You deserve answers. You gave her 3 years of your life. You built something meaningful with her and she just spat on it. She disrespected you and the vows you both took. If she was so unhappy and maybe hiding it, then she could have talked to you like an adult. Heck, marriage counseling exists for this very reason. I would not be surprised if you found out she's a criminal and skipped town to avoid jail. That's the only explanation I can think of her skipping town out of the blue. And comment number 2 says the polar opposite. Leave her alone, OP. It's creepy and stalkerish. Best thing you can do right now is file for a no-fault divorce, so you're not tethered to her anymore. If she wants to go through all the trouble of packing up and disappearing without a trace, then you should just take the hint and leave her alone. You're finally in a better place, and confronting her would only ruin your mental health again. Forget you even saw her, enjoy the rest of your trip, and go home. Update number 1. So, my friends and I have decided to track her down. We have 4 days before we have to go back home. We'll be spending the mornings and afternoons looking around town, then get back to the Airbnb in time for games. We're wearing disguises, hats, glasses, fake mustaches, and bulky jackets. My friends are taking this very seriously, as you can see. Luckily, this town is not very big, so we booked our reservation in a small town outside of the city where the stadium's located, so we could get cheap lodging and would not have to drive far to go to the game. Today was day 1, and we've already made a significant headway. We started off at the Walmart, where we first saw her, and spread out from there. All we had was a photo of her and the name of the model of her car. We looked around for about 6 hours before we decided to regroup. That's when my friend spotted her. They were stopping at a local diner to grab some food before heading back to the house, and they saw her there. She's a hostess. They called me right away and told me to hurry over there because it looked like she was getting off. So I flew over there. Probably even broke a couple of traffic laws on the way. The whole time, my friends just stayed on the line with me. They said the car I described had pulled up to the diner and there was a man and 2 kids inside. I turned into the parking lot just as Stacy walked out of the diner. I didn't bother to park my car properly, I just hopped out and called her name. She froze and looked at me as though I was a ghost, then looked towards her car. So I ran to catch up with her, and the guy in the car jumps out and gets in my face. He asked me what I thought I was doing, and I told him Stacy is my wife. Meanwhile, Stacy was urging him to get into the car. She said I'm a crazy person, probably a drug addict, and she didn't know me. So I pull out my phone. I went into my old handy Google Drive and showed the guy our wedding photos. I told him we've been married for 3 years and that 5 years ago she disappeared out of the blue. His face went from angry to horrifying. Meanwhile, Stacy was behind him in tears, begging him to please get back in the car so they could go home. The kids started asking, "What's going on? Why's mommy crying?" Yeah, the kids are hers. One of them looked around 11 or 12, while the other looked 5. Her husband, other husband, I guess, takes my phone and starts looking through the pictures. Then he asked how long I was in town for. He wanted to exchange numbers so we could talk about what happened, and I agreed. I told him that we've going to set some meeting up because I'd be leaving 3 days from now, and we parted ways not long after that. So I'm back at the Airbnb now, and the game's about to start. I just needed to empty my head because I'm even more confused now than I was 5 years ago when she left. Update number 2. Well, I met with Stacy and her husband this morning. He called me first thing and asked if I was free because he wanted to chit-chat. His name is Chase, by the way. One of my friends insisted he comes with us just in case it was a trap. So we drove over to the local coffee shop and I met Stacy and Chase there. I sat with them while my friend grabbed us some drinks. Stacy looked like a mess. Her hair was combed over and her eyes were red and puffy, and Chase thanked me for coming and for being honest with me, then gave me a pointed look at Stacy. Then he started explaining his side of things. Here's everything I learned. Chase and Stacy were high school sweethearts and stayed together through college. They decided to get married when she found out she was pregnant with their oldest, and a few weeks after their son was born, Stacy drained their joint bank account and just ran away. Disappeared without a trace just like that? Just like she did with me. He thought the same thing I did, and that maybe she was being blackmailed or was in some kind of danger and could not tell him. She basically left him to take care of their son alone. He said those 6 years were extremely hard, without help from his family, and the son would have probably ended up homeless. It was just before Stacy came back that he found a good job and was able to make a better life for them because his runaway wife reappeared just as suddenly as she disappeared. She begged and pleaded with him to take her back. She said that she'd made a mistake. She freaked out after their son was born because she had postpartum depression and was afraid that she would hurt him. So she took all their monies and ran away. As he explained the timeline, I realized that she met me only 3 months after she abandoned her whole family. He said the only reason he took her back was because of his son. He asked about his mother over and over and over again, and Chase just felt bad denying him a relationship with her. They ended up having another son right after they got back together. Thankfully, she did not run away after he was born. Chase kept an eye on her every single move, kept tabs on all their finances, and basically watched her like a hawk. He said he didn't care if she left him again. He had 6 years to get over it. He didn't want her to leave their son again. He could explain to their son that their mom did not want to be their mom anymore. Well, I felt sick to my stomach, guys. While he was explaining the timeline and everything, I realized she met me 3 months after she abandoned her family. I told Chase of the 6 years we were together. Funny enough, we were just about to try for kids of our own before she left. Stacy tried to apologize to me, but I'm not ready to say a word to her. I don't think I'll ever be ready. I thanked Chase for his time and headed back home. I think I'm less heartbroken and a bit more angry now. Update number 3. Well, I'm back home. That trip out of town felt surreal with everything that happened and like I went to a different country altogether. I had one last conversation with Chase before I left, this time without Stacy present. He asked if he could have a copy of our marriage certificate because he was going to take legal action against Stacy. He thought long and hard about it, and he thinks his kids are old enough to understand that their mom sucks. And he thinks even if he kept her around, it was only a matter of time before she hurt them again. Of course, it's illegal to be married to 2 people at once, right? So, I also learned that we were not the first people she screwed over. Apparently, when she was in college, she convinced her father to give her access to her college fund, and blew all the monies. Her family cut her off, and they're pretty wealthy apparently, and she's been from pillar to post since then. However, after I told him my side of things, he contacted her father, and he offered to help with the boys. Chase just wanted to build a good support system for his children without their mom. What broke him was what she lied about. When she came back, she made no mention of another relationship. She told him that she's been on her own the whole time and, they've just been apart. It wouldn't have been so bad if she would have just had a fling, but a whole other husband is too much. Also, she lied about the postpartum depression thing. They'd gone to several checkups after the birth, and she was enthusiastically taking care of the kid before she just disappeared. She complained a lot about being bored and just simply wanted to travel, and told him that they could take the baby with them. But Chase did not feel comfortable taking their very young baby in an airport or on a plane. They had a lot of arguments about it, even one before the day she left. He also asked me why I did not file for divorce after she disappeared. Well, I hadn't really thought about it, but I guess some small part of me still believed that she was forced to leave against her will. She'd been so kind and caring towards me that I could not just accept that she would abandon me out of nowhere for no reason. Divorce would have meant accepting that, and I guess it wasn't something I was ready to face. But now I'm more than ready to put Stacy behind me now that I know who she truly is. As soon as I got back, my buddy hooked me up with a lawyer, and I got the ball rolling. Chase also sent me a copy of his marriage certificate. The lawyer told me that since she was already married to somebody, our marriage technically wasn't legal in the first place. Yeah, I spent money on a wedding and honeymoon for nothing. When I told my parents about all this, they could not believe it. Stacy had been so incredible to them and my family as a whole. A lot of them mourned her after she disappeared, fearing the worst. To find out she's been married and ran back to her first husband felt like such a betrayal. But silver lining, we can all move on. Final update. You guys will not believe who called me last week. Stacy. I don't know how she got my number. I'm guessing she stole it from Chase's phone. Anyways, my phone goes off in the middle of the night, so naturally I'm thinking emergency. So I jump out of the bed and see a number I don't recognize. But again, I'm thinking emergency. So I pick it up. It's Stacy, saying she needs my help. She says she's in a bind and needs money. Chase is in charge of all the household finances and he won't give her any. I asked her what she really needed the money for, and to be honest with me for once, she said Chase had filed for divorce and reported to the authorities that she's been married to 2 people at once. In short, she did not want to go to jail. She wanted money to help post her inevitable bail. However, I believe that she's lying to me. I think she needed money to evade the authorities. She ran away from Chase, she ran away from me, and now she wanted to run away from the consequence of her actions. I could not help myself. I started to yell. It was the middle of the night, and my neighbors probably hate me now, but I had to say my piece. I told her how much she hurt me and hurt everyone around me, and my family mourned her. It took me years to recover after she disappeared, and I could not believe anybody could be that selfish. She started saying over and over how sorry she was, and that I was such a good man and good husband, and she never meant to hurt me. But she really needed my help. I told her no amounts of sorries are going to convince me. Yesterday, I get a text from Chase saying that he filed divorce and was granted full custody of the kids after he reported Stacy. The judge actually felt sorry for her, gave her community service instead of a jail time plus a little tiny fine. They also put an ankle monitor on her since she's a flight risk. Go figure. She was not allowed to be around the kids though, and I don't feel sorry for her. She left Chase to struggle alone with her kid and left me heartbroken for years. I hope she rots. Honestly, this was one of the weirdest stories that I've narrated in quite some time. It just seemed like Stacy, she did this for absolutely no reason. She just wanted to run away, start a whole new life, and meanwhile, she's married to another guy and has multiple babies with him. What she did to OP was wrong, it was toxic, it was manipulative, and she drew him along for no reason. Guys, I want to know how you would have handled this situation. Just imagine you're out with your friends at an Airbnb on a vacation, and you stumble upon the one girl who wrecked your world. How do you go about handling it? Drop it in the comment section down below, guys. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories like this every single day. And if you guys want to be a part of these online readings, consider subscribing to the channel, guys. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. And of course, remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.